Thank you all for joining us today. I know we've got a few of our speakers that are connecting right now, a few technical difficulties as is always the case with any kind of Zoom meeting. I want to thank our speakers for joining us today.
I'm on now.
My name is Christopher Douglas. I am the New Jersey chapter coordinator for elected officials to protect America. If you aren't familiar with EOPA, we are a network of current and former elected officials who care deeply about protecting our planet and people. We're committed to solving the climate crisis, ensuring environmental justice, and protecting our lands and waters. EOPA is also the only national organization mobilizing veterans who are lawmakers on the environment. Today, we'll be discussing offshore wind and the effects it will have in our state. Over 110 elected officials across New Jersey have already signed our letter supporting the responsible development of offshore wind, and some of them are here today on our impressive panel, including Assemblymember Tom Giblin, Deputy Majority Leader, Assemblymember Herb Conaway, a doctor and Air Force veteran, Atlantic County Commissioner Karen Fitzpatrick, member of the EOPA New Jersey Leadership Council and candidate for State Assembly in the 2nd District, Atlantic City Council member Colleen Shabazz, a professor and civil rights activist, Jersey City Council member Mira Prince Airy, and Toms River Environmental Commission board member Mary Sharon Quilter, also a candidate for State Assembly in the 10th District. We'll now take a few minutes to hear from each of our speakers and then take your questions. Please feel free to use the Q&A function at any time. And first up, we have Assemblymember Thomas Giblin.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to join so many elected officials from across New Jersey to discuss one of the most critical items of the day. This is something the title of our organization is about protecting America, and I think that suits us very aptly. As we all know, we've heard about the tremendous challenge of greenhouse emissions, and this is certainly an area that the offshore wind development will help us in that regard in terms of protecting the planet. I see many pluses as far as economic development. We'll be able to find opportunities for items being manufactured in New Jersey, and then also in terms of the operation of the offshore wind facilities. It will mark a lesser dependence on the utilization of fossil fuel. And I've been fortunate to work along with my colleagues, especially in the General Assembly, to try to move this whole issue forward. Most recently, in the last few years. So I'm honored to join many of my distinguished colleagues in government across New Jersey who feel the same passion that I do as far as making sure that we move further along the line as far as development of our offshore sites. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Giblin. I appreciate your comments. We'll now turn to Assemblymember Conaway.
Good morning, everyone. And I'm very pleased to join a number of colleagues who are have a forward lean with respect to renewable energy and the great advantages that it can bring to our society. There's no question that human activity, particularly in the production and use of fossil fuels, is harming the planet, indeed, critically so. And as the planet goes, we as human beings go. And so our efforts in this area to relieve us of this overarching dependence on fossil fuels will work to save the planet and save humankind as well. Very important goals I hope that we all share. When I think of renewable energy, I think of jobs. These projects, which when fully built, will power me and homes, bring billions to the state economy, and provide, as I just mentioned, thousands of jobs and a tremendous amount of economic growth in the hundreds of millions of dollars here to our state, employing not only engineers and scientists, but the many technical persons who are involved in the installation and maintenance of these projects. And the greatest thing about it is that these tools are going to be built right here in our own country. As we move forward with these projects and support it and all that we can through our good offices statutorily and our advocacy, we can, and as noted, I'm a physician, we'll expect to see tremendous health benefits accruing to the reduction and the burden of these, or I should say, the improvement of air quality that will come when tons of greenhouse gas emissions are taken out of our environment. It'll be less asthma, less lung disease, less heart disease, better quality of life for all who live in our wonderful state. And that is certainly a goal that I hope we all share. So I look forward to the discussion and doing whatever I can to promote renewable energy in all of its forms so that we are a stronger, healthier society.
Thank you, Assemblymember Conaway. Very well said. We'll now transition to Atlantic City County Commissioner Karen Fitzpatrick.
Thank
I think you might be on mute still, Commissioner.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. It's an honor to be with EOPA again this morning. I appreciate the work that you all are doing and bringing this issue to the forefront. Climate change is real. Ask anyone who lives on the coast. 19 of Atlantic County's 23 municipalities are affected by tidal water. Coastal erosion is a constant threat, and hurricanes are devastating the region. Just last week, as a result of Hurricane Elsa, a tornado rolled up a side street, only 3 houses from where I live. Luckily, no one was hurt. And tornadoes just don't happen in my town of Linwood until now. And climate change is the reason. Routine flooding near Atlantic City has increased from less than once a year between 1950 and 60 to about 8 times a year between 2007 and 2019. It's undeniable for anyone who lives in a coastal community, but I'm hopeful because Governor Murphy is taking action to mitigate the problem and thousands of green jobs will be created. We can rebuild from the pandemic by building our clean energy economy with offshore wind development at the forefront. Alone, it could supply 92% of all of our electric needs. Add solar and land wind power to the mix, and we can eliminate our dependency on fossil fuels for electricity and meet the state's goal of 100% clean energy by 2050, sharply reducing the emissions of greenhouse gases. We're coming back from the pandemic by pursuing a more diverse economy. And this is a moment in time where we can take what we learned and keep the good and beneficial actions as we move into the future. I never would have thought that after only 1 month of not driving, smog in Los Angeles would lessen so dramatically. Our clean energy economy with offshore wind development is at the forefront. Alone, it could supply 92% of our electricity needs. The country's largest permitted project is Ocean Wind, 15 miles off Atlantic City. This is an unbelievable gift to us. We are struggling to diversify our economy, and here we are in the perfect place at the time it's necessary to embrace this industry. Ocean wind will produce 1,100 megawatts of electricity when operational in 2024, and again, spur thousands of skilled jobs. It will reduce carbon emissions by 2.2 million tons annually, which is the equivalent of taking 400,000 cars off the road, and provide a reliable and scalable source of energy, immune to supply shortages. I'm honored to be part of the EOPA and feel our message is getting out. Just last week, the Press of Atlantic City featured a front page above the fold story titled, "In Atlantic City, Rising Seas Threaten an Already Struggling Industry," and talked about how our restaurants are constantly fighting rising tides and sunny day flooding as a normal part of their business. But it's expensive and not a winning proposition unless more is done to combat rising water through alternative energies. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Very timely to hear about those recent storms and how that's affected your area. We'll now head also to Atlantic City to hear from Councilmember Kaleem Shabazz.
Good morning. Thank you. I too am honored to be here this morning. This is an important subject. This is an important task. And as Commissioner Fitzpatrick said before me, we here at the shore are very, very concerned about the reality of climate change. As an elected official from a shore community, Atlantic City, I can tell you that we appreciate the work that this organization is doing, that we are actively involved in pushing back against the climate deniers, and we are doing pragmatic, positive things as a city government to move forward. We have formed an environmental commission, and we're going to be naming people. The mayor is going to be naming people to that commission very shortly. We are focused in our planning and development committee on sustainability projects. In fact, we have a couple that are going to be on our agenda for the July 21st meeting. We're working on our microgrid. And just as importantly, we are focused on the offshore grants that our community college just won, and we're going after another grant. And let me just say this, I think it is very critically important that we don't leave out communities of color as we talk about the production of offshore wind, and as we talk about alternative fuel, and as we talk about the impacts of climate change. Just last night at our NACP meeting, which I have the honor of also being the president of the Atlantic City branch of NACP, we broached the subject of reaching out to the offshore wind industry to talk about employment opportunities for our young people. These are the jobs of the future. Unfortunately, some of the jobs that young people of color and young people in general are looking at now, in a couple of years, they won't even exist. So that's what we are doing in legislative and in a civil rights and social justice stance with regard to wind. I think the potential is tremendous, and the things that we are doing right now are important and critical moving forward. As Commissioner Fitzpatrick just noted, the press is now paying great attention to some of the things that are happening with regard to climate change in Atlantic City. This pandemic has really decimated the shore economy, and we're trying to come back. And one of the ways we come back in building smarter is supporting and expanding the initiatives of our governor, and asking that our legislators on the state level take this very seriously and look at all ways that we can improve the general environment, and most particularly pay attention to those communities of color who are so hard hit and who are experiencing a disparate amount as climate change becomes more impactful. So I am very honored for and appreciative of this opportunity, and I hope that we will continue to speak up, to speak out, and to organize. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. I will now head up the coast to hear from Jersey City Council member Mira Prince Airy.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you to the EOPA for having this forum for us to talk about one of the most important pressing issues. Here in Jersey City, we are one of the largest cities in the state, and I think and as a major transportation hub, it's incredibly important for Jersey City to serve as the leader in the area and in the state on issues for sustainability and ways we can reduce our carbon footprint. Supporting offshore energy and wind energy is really important. In addition to the things we're already doing here in Jersey City, we recently approved the Energy Savings Improvement Plan, which is going to create a microgrid here in Jersey City. It will add to our electric vehicle fleet. It will, save taxpayers $21 million in savings over the course of 20 years and fund critical infrastructure projects. And I say this because this is what we're doing just on the solar front. If you start to combine wind energy and other alternative sources of energy, the impact not only for savings to residents, ways to improve our infrastructure are enormous. And I think too that one of the most important things about this is that it is preparing our young people and our next generation of leaders for the jobs of the future. As other colleagues here have echoed, many of the jobs that are available now will no longer be available to our young people. This also is very great for, pushing the STEM and STEAM initiatives that we have here in Jersey City. And I think that from a resident's perspective, we are looking to develop our Hackensack Riverfront with our Bayfront project, which is going to add an additional 8,000 units over there. That borders the Hackensack River, and so we need to be paying attention to different ways we can shrink our carbon footprint and mitigate some of the storm issues that we have for that kind of development to be successful. So again, I thank you all for having me. I think it's really important that municipal, county, and state legislators all work together to make these opportunities a reality for our state. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. And finally, we'll turn to Mary Sharon Quilter of Toms River Environmental Board. She is one of the board members.
Hi, good morning. I am going to veer off into a little bit of a different direction so that you can get the full benefit to offshore wind. And that I'm going to discuss marine life and water quality, what the advantage of wind turbines is to them. As far as marine life, what happens is it creates a reef effect when you have these facilities, which are going to be quite far off the coast. So initially you'll see mollusks, clams, oysters, mussels attaching themselves to the base. And that will, of course, bring in crabs and small fish and larger fish. So you have a whole ecosystem that's being born off of these bases. And that is very good for the environment. But probably the more interesting aspect to water quality is that every clam and every oyster in this country, or everywhere in the world actually, filters 50 gallons of water a day. So if we are populating our reefs with millions and millions of oysters and clams, think of how much water can be filtered, and that is a tremendous asset to the world. I am also a coastal steward, and I got that certification through Rutgers Marine Life and Reclaim the Bay. So I've been examining this aspect of wind turbines for quite some time. And I would really suggest that everybody go into the BOEM.gov website and take a look at the scoping meetings that they have had. They're very interesting. You'll see the concerns from the fishermen, which turn out not to be really a concern at all. And you'll also see in intake sessions from Ørsted and Atlantic Shores specifically, who have funded a lot of research on this aspect, that they're still taking information from people who were affected, such as fishermen. Because of their intake from these people, they have redesigned the bases. Originally, they had the bases to look more scalloped And the fishermen said, well, that's not going to work. We really would like it better if it was square. So they have made accommodations that way. And they're still taking input if anybody wants to let them know how you feel. And I think that's about all I have right now. Oh yes, as far as studies on lobsters and on fishing, if you take a look at the studies from Block Island and you also take a look at the studies from England, specifically Yorkshire Marine Research Center, you'll see that there's only a positive impact on wind turbines. So hopefully we'll get them real soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quilter, for covering some of the science background to our panel today. Well, now we're going to shift into the Q&A section. I see some people have already started to use that function. I'll also now ask if all of our panelists want to come on video for our discussion section of the press conference. Looks like our first question here is from John, and he would like to know why we're issuing this statement now, given that New Jersey has already been approved for 3.5 gigawatts of offshore wind, and the governor is supportive. Is this in any sort of concern to opposition? I see Assemblyman Conaway has already started to answer that. Assemblyman, would you like to take that one first?
Well, as I wrote my reply, there's not a government policy that isn't opposed by somebody, and you have to. And advocacy means that you put forward your ideas, your thoughts. Hopefully, they are ones grounded in science and other evidence that can be used to persuade, and that people who are open to persuasion will be brought over to your position. I mean, that's the best we can do. This is a process, of course. It's not going to be an issue of getting these approved and all of a sudden we're going to have offshore wind generating this energy. We're still sort of at the beginning of this process in many ways, and so continued advocacy, and not only in this vein, will pay dividends as we start to think about, decarbonizing our transportation systems, our both commercial and recreational and the bulk transport systems, and decarbonizing our homes. So it's all part of a long process of advocacy, and it's never. I guess it could be too late, but once it started, it certainly needs to continue right straight through to the end.
If I could say something at this time, I'd appreciate it.
Please, yes.
I think one important aspect, and it was kind of started by Councilman Shabazz, is about creating job opportunities. With the pandemic, Atlantic City has been hit hard by unemployment. If you looked around the state of New Jersey, I don't think there's any area that's been impacted the way they have been in terms of real job losses in the casino industry. They're recovering, perhaps not to the same pace we'd like to, but maybe with programs that, for example, are being initiated over at Atlantic County Community College and other sites throughout the county. This will create an opportunity for people to be trained, retrained, try to guide them for well-paying jobs with benefits with the offshore wind that's being proposed. So that is, one of many thoughts I have, but the economic advantages really looms large. Thank you.
Chris, if I may.
Yeah, yes, please, council member.
I like to associate myself with both of the comments of both assembly people. I think that they are on it. We're really adding to the environmental movement that already exists by doing things like this and bringing it to people's attention. The economic issue is crucial. The educational issue is crucial. The advocacy issue is crucial. And we have to expand, in my point of view, expand and deepen people who are committed to environmental change, people who are knowledgeable about environmental change. And I think that we have to make this a more mainstream thought and activity. And things like this, events like this, bring us closer to that, because the way that we're going to get the kind of change we need to turn this climate monster around is going to be expanding and deepening and widening allies and coalitions.
If I could jump in for a moment. Assemblyman Conaway and Deputy Majority Leader Giblin and my friend Councilman Shabazz have all touched on, this is a long-term culture changing project that we are trying to accomplish. And when we've been putting gas in cars for more than 100 years. And wind energy is just the beginning. And we need continuing education and advocacy to change really the American car culture, to accept electric vehicles, get our public transportation run by non-fossil fuel engines, school buses, all of these things. And that's why we continue to have these webinars and outreach events to reach more people. Even though it's been approved by the government, everybody needs to be on board with the cultural change that we are trying to create that's necessary for our survival.
The important thing that we have to really get across to people across New Jersey, this is not a Democratic issue. This is not a Republican issue. It is about an issue for New Jersey and America. It's about protecting our environment. As was mentioned several times during this webinar, there's been a whole series of storms and all kinds of flooding issues that have been prompted as a result of the shift in global warming. And we have a responsibility, if not for ourselves, but certainly for our kids and our grandkids to kind of get this right.
Absolutely.
I have my hand up. If I can just briefly
Yes,
let people know what the actual cost of climate change was on Superstorm Sandy. First of all, 13% of the damage wreaked on us by Sandy was caused by climate change. And that equates into $8.7 billion in damages. So we're talking about not just safety, we're talking about a lot of money.
thank you. Councilmember Prince Eric.
And just to add one more thought and comment to this, New Jersey is a big state, and each municipality has different needs and priorities. But the one thing that we all share in common is the damage that happens when we have these major flooding and storm events. You have down the shore the loss of jobs, loss of livelihood, the erosion of the shoreline. Here in Jersey City, we had our tunnels cut off, so people could not commute in and out of work in the tri-state area. So this isn't, it affects us all a little bit differently, but it should absolutely be a priority for every city in the state. And as as legislators and as people who work on policy, we all know that there's always going to be something that's going to oppose our idea, no matter what it is. And it's up to us as leaders to make sure that we are in the forefront with the educational programming, and with the PSAs to let people know and to continue to remind them of the importance of that. In marketing, it's always about impressions. And this is really, really the same thing.
Well said. Thank you all. Our next question here is about some of the roadblocks that offshore wind has encountered and how you would respond to them, specifically about some concerns about what the visibility will look like from the shoreline or any impacts on marine wildlife. So I'll open that up to the panel.
Can I take that? Okay,
Yeah,
first
sure.
of all, the wind turbines will be 15 miles offshore. So that is very far away to see from the beach. What was the other part of the question?
Any other kind of roadblocks or how do you respond to criticism of offshore wind, whether that's the visibility from shore, complaint as you just dispelled, or any marine life impacts?
Okay, I think I touched on the marine life impact. It will enhance the marine life in the area. So it will also help commercial fishermen. It'll help people that just fish on their own. So by adding more marine life, that really expands our benefits, not to mention the quality of the water that will be improving as well.
Yes, Councilmember Goodwin. I'm sorry, Assemblyman Goodwin.
That's right. Sometimes a council job is better than being an assemblyman. But I think we all, when we sit back and look at the whole picture, there's no two ways about it, that the pluses significantly outweigh the small minuses. And, when you look at what is being done for the environment, what is being done for the economy, what's being done for our safety and a better quality of life. And there should really be minimal, if any, opposition to this if it's explained properly. I think that we should be able to sign aboard newspapers, other forms of media, because they see the advantages of having offshore wind. And like I said before, this is not a D or an R issue. It's about good government and about our future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next question here about some of the benefits of offshore wind. How you would summarize those, both in an economic context, context of the health of our population, and also any drawbacks that you think could prevent this offshore wind development from happening in our state.
Well, I think, if I may, there's been a lot of mention of the benefits. That question, reducing the tonnage of the products of fossil fuel and combustion in our environment is will produce great health benefits. There were people in parts of the world that who lived near a mountain range who never saw the mountaintops until the pandemic, kept people home, kept the cars off the road, and all of a sudden, the skies cleared before them, and they just, geez, I never saw those mountaintops before. I mean, I suspect there are a few places in the world, certainly in the industrialized world, that didn't see before their own eyes the remarkable positive benefit just to their visual environment that resulted from all of this transportation traffic being reduced. Now, obviously, there's an economic cost of that as well, but I think it was, for all of the pain that the pandemic caused, it did elevate in the minds of individuals, what can be achieved if we do something about our overarching dependence on fossil fuels to power our transportation systems. And so, so the environmental impact, the positive impact on nature and just the environment, visually and aesthetically, I think are things certainly that are going to come to people. The jobs, as mentioned, are going to be significant. The positive impacts in the economy, not only because of the jobs being created and developing these new resources, but from the reduced healthcare costs that will be produced by the development of the resources inures to the benefit of all of us. So all of those things are very positive. I do think that ongoing study of just as we do for many of the things we do now is going to need to be undertaken with respect to offshore wind to ensure that we see benefits to marine life. What might it mean for shipping? What might be the impacts on avian life? That is, are there going to be bird kills related to this? I mean, so there are a lot, and if so, how do we redesign it or address that if we find that there are going to be some negative impacts? We always work to reduce the negatives while we try to enhance the positives, and that will take place here with this industry and across other aspects of renewable energy as well. So there's nothing that's 100% positive. But we, as I say, by study and review and the willingness to make adjustments as you move forward, will enhance the positives and reduce the negatives.
If I may, Chris.
Yes, please.
Quickly, I think one of the Assemblyman is correct. I think one of the things that is going to be positive and conducive is the involvement of our academic institutions. Down here in Atlantic City, we have our community college, Atlantic Cape Community. I'm a little biased because I'm a Rutgers graduate, but I think Rutgers has tremendous potential. And I think the next step, one of the next steps I would suggest, is that we get our academic institutions involved in the studies, involved in advocating for this. I know at Stockton, they're talking about starting a Marine certificate program. I think that is probably one of the next steps to help broaden and entrench this movement.
Thank you, Council Member. Assemblyman Giblin, do you have something to add to that?
Well, that's something I'm very conscious of, with the education. That's a keystone as far as, getting success as far as the offshore wind project, and, to go back to the point I initially raised, in my sense, being involved in public service for a number of years, the legislature has really evolved, especially in recent years, about being so much more environmentally conscious. And if this whole project comes to fruition, I think that you'd see sentiment among the legislators, both in the Senate and the Assembly, to really press the state to make sure that it meets its goals and expectations as far as a model for the 50 states throughout the great United States. And looking at the whole matter of creating job opportunities, these are going to be good paying jobs with benefits, construction jobs. We hear the buzzword coming out of the White House in recent days about infrastructure. This is going to be a very significant infrastructure project that's going to pour a lot of money into the local economy and put local people to work. And then step further, the maintenance of these facilities or having people who will operate them and also maintain them. That's why I go back to the point, perhaps you can train the unemployed or train people who've lost jobs in the casino industry or local residents about these positions. And the developers of the offshore wind project have indicated, they will pay decent wages and benefits. So you look at the whole process, jobs, environment, putting money into the local economy, it's really going to be a triple header as far as that's concerned.
Thank you, and that sets up perfectly for our next question, as we've talked a lot about these job creation benefits for both our state and local elected officials on the call today. What do you believe can be done to ensure that these job creation and economic benefits are shared for the entire state?
Well, one thing you can do is to ensure that those companies that are going to be building this project are required to hire locally and to ensure that their workforce is diversified. I mean, this is one of the roles of government, to look at, particularly when public money is involved, everybody pays taxes. And so in my view, I mean, everybody should benefit from those tax expenditures. And so that means that standards are going to have to be met. What are you doing in terms of employment? How are you bringing on your workforce? Where are you recruiting your workforce? What are you achieving the goals that the society demands with respect to the diversity of that workforce? And so this is part of the ongoing job of administration. I know this administration has taken steps, and at least and the companies are following suit with these directives. We just have to make sure that we do the proper oversight with respect to the diversity and the employment, and then to call people out and to pull people up or back if they're not behaving in a manner that that meets the expectations of the people that do the work and pay the taxes.
Senator Giblin, yes.
I don't see anything wrong. It's worked effectively in other parts of the state is by having set aside agreements as far as trying to commit to local residents, and then also trying to have a serious training program, especially with younger people who sometimes come out of school, whether it be high school or junior college, things like that, you know, to guide them in the right direction. You need input from the community back. So we have a president of the local chapter of the NAACP, but then there's other groups, church groups, civic groups, community groups. Perhaps some type of ad hoc community board should be set up to kind of listen to what their issues are. We want to work collaboratively on this whole matter. So I think it's better to try this earlier than later. In other words, listen to what their issues are. Probably won't take that much time, but I think you'll find it fairly consistent. It's about putting money back in the community. It's about giving a hand to minority businesses. It's about creating job opportunities. And of course, the most important issue is the end product about our environment. And then if you really lay it out to people with those series of educational meetings, I think you'll see it move forth very smoothly.
Absolutely. I'll move on to one of our last questions here before we close out. Many residents here are worried that these projects could raise the cost of their electricity in the future. What's the message to your residents and constituents about that concern?
Well, very often the question, when these questions come up, you find that not all the costs are taken into account. There are tremendous costs for not moving forward that apply across the board to everyone. There are costs, as I said, in healthcare. There's costs in terms of our ability to survive on this planet. There are costs related to increased storms, increased flooding. All of those, drive cost of living. And so taken and looked at broadly, and if the costs go up somewhat, people will say, you know what, it's worth it because I'm getting much more back. I'm getting much greater return for that cost. I'm healthier, the environment's healthier, I'm leaving a legacy of a healthier environment to my children. I'm reducing the intensity of storms and other environmental damage related to the use of these fossil fuels. So it is, and I see this across the landscape, whether it be in healthcare, whether it be in government. If we just take time to evaluate all the costs and benefits, most of the time, particularly in the area of renewable energy and the need to expand access to it and its use, the individual comes out well ahead. And that's going to be important to making sure the policies move forward into the future.
So Chris, I think it's going to require a whole of government approach at every level. We're going to have to closely monitor and advocate for our constituents. And I think if we do that at the state, the county, and the local level, that we can ensure that the questions of cost doesn't become a major concern. There's always concern. Finances is always concern, especially in marginalized communities. But I think if we involve academic, the governmental, and the administration, I think we can develop strong enough defenses to at least mitigate any outrageous increases.
Yes, Assemblyman Giblin.
Inaction is not an option in this area. The whole future is dependent on what we do here in 2021. And I'm sure we can be in touch with other parts of the country who have developed offshore wind sites to learn from their experiences. There's nothing wrong with that. I think positive will emanate from that. And if we have the collaboration of all the facets of the community, the people that live here, the people that work here, and the different environmental lists that we have in our midst, whether it be in state government or some of our educational institutions, and we have the proper training, and that's extremely critical, down the road. And I think that's taking place with the collaboration you have going at the Atlantic County Cape May Community College. So onward and upward. That's my attitude, and indicate my support for this effort.
Thank you, Assembly Member. I'll end with our last question here about how we can educate the public about the benefits of offshore wind. My opinion would be to hear from all of you, talented and impressive speakers, on your thoughts about an offshore wind is the best way we can educate people. So I want to offer up any last chance of if anyone wants to share their final thoughts on why we need offshore wind in New Jersey, or why this is something that you're happy to sign your name on.
Well, I think one of the things we can do is constantly push this down and out to our young people. One of the things we're doing in the branch of the NACP that I lead, we're having a blue economy essay and video contest where we are challenging youngsters to develop essays about the blue economy and a video, and we're going to give out cash prizes. I think that we have to try to inculcate this into our culture. We're going to be doing seminars. We've done a couple. We're going to do more. I think everything that we can do to actually reach people. I think the pandemic has shown us that Zoom is an effective way to reach people. We should continue that in my mind until people are actually comfortable coming together in the kinds of groups that we have in the past, although their comfort level is rising. But I think we need to use all media, all levels of communication to get the message out and to work in tandem to move forward with climate change, with wind, and bringing people. I think, lastly, that the pandemic has been terrible in terms of its effects on our life in the country and really all over the world. But I think one thing it has shown us is that we can change when needed, and we can go outside of our comfort level. I think that's what we're going to need to do in this next phase of to change and to really go outside of our comfort level. And as Commissioner Fitzpatrick said, to introduce a new way of thinking. The automobile, that's our way of thinking that all of us have grown up with, and we just have to change that. And I think that people, if we continue to lead, people are willing to embrace that.
I think that also Councilman Shabazz is correct when talking about young people. I've been thinking lately about the litter bug campaign that happened when I was a little girl, and it really changed the way we acted. I think that teaching in schools, kids bring new information home to parents, and that's a good way to spread the word.
That's a great point about teaching kids in school and getting us started there, and how that might influence parents. It is, we educate and train because we want certain concepts to be taken up by those who are heading to adulthood and will be taking on leadership roles. I mean, I think what we do on health and proper eating, and you have my daughter had two physician parents, but she swore off, at least for in her younger days, having any French fries, because it was better for her. Now it didn't last, but for time it held, and she'll come back to it as she has to think about her own children when they come along, not too soon, when they come along. But that's a very important thing. The efforts that this organization is making, and others who are fighting for clean energy, or fighting really for our planet, fighting for our survival. I mean, it is leadership counts. We have that in the Murphy administration that has been that has decided quite rightly that New Jersey, being a coastal city with high energy needs to lead this. Being a coastal state that has had seen firsthand in recent memory the terrible impacts of increasing storm intensity and what that's meant for our economy and our livelihoods, indeed our very lives, unfortunately, of far too many of us. Are leading the way, and those of us in the legislature, are quite rightly following that leadership, and some of us have been around a long time, been doing it, or for quite a while. So it's all of this conversation, all of this advocacy, it is additive. It builds toward changing the paradigm. And while the paradigm was, you try to achieve that first car, and it's going to be, you didn't really care about it, but you just wanted gasoline in the car, and you wanted to drive that car around and get to work in that car. Now kids coming up today, and adults even today, are saying, that next car, I want that next car to be an affordable electric vehicle. And I want the infrastructure to allow me to drive that vehicle back and forth to work, or if I want to take vacation with my family, I can go, right straight across the country. Being able to refuel that car, whether it's by battery power, by hydrogen power, what have you. And these are the expectations that increasing number of us have. And in this country, with the American people behind it and saying, this is where we want to go, the government will get there, because they recognize that we who serve have to serve a population that are making demands upon us to achieve the goals that they have for their lives and their future. And so I'm confident we'll get there, onward and upward, as my colleague has said. That's where we're headed, and that's where we need to go.
Can I just interject?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, okay. Another aspect that I find very effective is, and I know this from experience as a Sandy survivor, is community outreach groups. I'm an active member of the New Jersey Organizing Project. We have a whole arm out there talking to people about wind turbines and damage from flooding and that kind of thing. I think those groups can really enhance the outreach efforts that we have.
Thank you. So we've got Assemblyman Giblin, and then Councilmember Prince Airy.
Well, in conclusion, I think we have to be very proactive in this particular case, because it's being built off the coast of Atlantic City. We have to make sure that the counties surrounding Atlantic County are very much up to speed as far as understanding how this whole project will work and about the enormous benefits that will be derived. But then we have to really reach out to the major news organizations in New Jersey, whether it be papers or cable TV, and try to get them to hear our side of the story about the enormous benefits that will be derived from that. Somebody touched on the issue of education. I think that's very critical, especially with our next generation coming down the pike, that there should be a course, whether you do it on an ongoing basis or do it periodically in our school system, preferably the secondary schools, but just open up the whole topic about the issue of the environment. It's very timely. More and more of our youngsters and our families want to know, is this a myth, or is it for real, and what can we do really to save our planet and really make our communities that much safer health-wise and everything else that will improve our quality of life.
Thank you. And finally, Councilmember Prince Airy.
So just briefly, because everyone has already said it and a little bit better than I, but I think what we're hearing here is just really important, just to meet people where they're at. Right. So if you're working with young people, bringing on those educational components and the encouragement that they need to think differently, think bigger, think more broadly. When you're looking at, young adults and adults, that's maybe a better opportunity to talk about the opportunity for economic development. Right. And I think that the one thing that the pandemic has taught us is that, we are willing to rise to the occasion of any challenge that's presented to us. And this is the biggest challenge that is going to be presented to us in our lifetime, right? And so I think that education is key, and understanding how people are, consuming their information is just that other big challenge of it, because not every city has a paper of record any longer. Some people are only getting their information online. And to the point of community groups, we have great groups here in Jersey City that are doing heat mapping projects and tree inventories and tree canopies. And so making sure that you have that community activism and public and private collaboration is what's really, really going to move this forward.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Fitzpatrick, do you have anything to add to that?
The public-private partnership works really well, and we do have the organizing project here in Atlantic County. We do have some really fine grassroots organizations, and I believe that they would be happy to partner and promote wind power because they're all on board.
Well, thank you all again. I especially thank you to our speakers, media, students, and all of our attendees for this great discussion. I'm sorry if we weren't able to get to every question. For more information, please contact our communications director, Ramona DeHue. The dynamic renewable energy sector will vitalize New Jersey's economy and lead to thousands of skilled jobs, as our panelists have talked about today, and prevent some of the most devastating effects of the climate crisis. Offshore wind is the key to a prosperous and healthy future. EOPA New Jersey calls on all elected officials across the state to join the over 110 others by signing our letter in support of offshore wind.